Hi everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Journey of Magnification by Dr. Oscar. Let me introduce you Dr. Oscar. He's a great mentor and a friend. And I chose this day because it's supposed to be Teacher's Day. And he's my mentor or a teacher for documentation in magnification. And there are a lot of things which he's always taught me. And I'm very happy to be associated with him. To bring to your notice that he's been practicing magnification for more than 20 years. I would not get into his degrees, his graduation, and what OPLs and KOLs he belongs to, because people who know magnification know Dr. Oscar very well. So, hi, Dr. Oscar. It's our pleasure to have you here, and I'm sure people are going to be really impressed and going to learn a lot from you. So now coming to the panelists, I would like to introduce Dr. Nitish Kamboj. He is practicing in Dehradun, and he's been using magnification for more than 12 to 13 years, if I'm not wrong. And he's an amazing clinician and a practitioner. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Divyaroop Rai. He's a good friend and a multi-talented guy. I've learned a lot from him again. These are all my gurus here, whom I'm introducing to you. And he's doing wonderfully well in Jaipur. He's an orthodontist, and I want to push him into magnification, so I have him here. And our last panelist is got caught up with something. She would join us very soon. So over to you, Oscar, before we... So over to you is the first question which I would like to ask you is, why magnification? What made you get into magnification? That's one question which everyone asks me in India, magnification, why?
Okay, I have a simple reason for that, because, I'm married to a dental technician. And you can imagine if I'll do a crown, a partial crown, something else, and you don't see the preparation margins very well and the impression is not very good, I get no food. I get no clothes washed. I'm cut off my house. My children will hate me. So it's a sort of self-defense. First, the second was I first brought my first loops in 1997. Being in dental school, it was the first pre-clinical course I had, and you know that the assistants were annoying me because it was always, oh, you have to smoothen up this flat and kill this edge, and I didn't knew what they are talking about first. Second, I was always in the mouth of the pup. The mannequin, I was always creeping inside, getting a better view or something else. So I bought my first pair of loops. It was a 0.05 magnification, not very good. A very small magnification, but it was not bad. And somehow I managed to get into the clinical parts of the dental school. I don't know how, but it worked out. And then I bought my second pair of loops. It was a 3.5 front size, the first connectionless size I had. And I could annoy the dental assistants, or the assistant professors, because it was like, you have to bevel it. I beveled it. You don't see the bevel I did, because I did it with magnification. You have no magnification. I beveled it and you don't see it, so where's the game? And after finishing dental school, I bought my first Leica. It was in the year 2001. It was a Leica M300. So it's basically, it's a laboratory microscope, only screwed on an arm, mounted on the ceiling with halogen light. And I was like, wow, I can go up to 40-fold magnification to work in endodontics or something else. Funny fact besides, during the dental exam, I had to do one root canal in a molar, and it was a vital case. I broke 2 files and I perfed the mesial root. Okay. So, okay, it was not my day, but the patients took it sportive and we could rescue the tooth. And in the year 2001, working with a microscope, you were kind of freak. No one worked with a microscope. Everyone asked the same question: why do you use a microscope? Why do you even need a magnification or something else? So first, my excuse is my wife, because I work closely with her and I have to satisfy her in a professional way.
Yep.
And the second one was I'm getting older and older. I'm now 46 years and my vision is getting blurry, and it decreases seriously. It was always a myth for me, but it's true. It's decreasing. The third reason was I wanted to be more precise, because I started to work with a CEREC in the year 2000. And if you take a CEREC chairside, the optical system of the CEREC camera enhances and magnifies about a factor 20.
Okay.
So you prepped the tooth and you made the optical impression, and you were so proud of yourself because everything was smooth, and I have nice angles and flow, and you see the impression and it's like, what the hell did I prep there?
Okay.
And it was not satisfying. So going into this magnification is very nice, because you see everything. You see the undercuts, you see the spikes, you see the bevels you did, and everything you did wrong, you can correct it if you like.
So basically it is for self-learning and to show you things faster than learning with experience, because you can see that rather than going by experience.
I'm always shocked and astonished when people tell me that they don't need it because they have experience. It's like, okay.
Okay.
I don't want to be treated by you, but don't take it personal. I hate it when people tell you something to do or they don't need it because they have experience. It's like, no.
Okay. I would like to cut short in between and say we have the fourth panelist here, Dr. Vinisha. Dr. Vinisha from Kanpur. She's again an endodontist and a specialist with lasers. She's got a very good clinical acumen. So now over to Nitish for the next question. We would come rounds and
nice introduction, Dr. Officer. I want to know one thing, like, do you feel like, that it can be routinely used in dentistry? Like why every time people talk endo and magnification? People talk, they must be asking you also, why only endo and magnification? Why not extraction? Why not implants? Why not other field with magnification? What are your views about these things?
It's like when you have the experience, you don't need the magnification. It's very easy. No, to be very honest, I don't know, because the microscope or the magnification itself was brought into the profession and the specialty of dentistry by the endodontists, and it was always the high castle. You need a microscope for doing endo, which is basically not completely to 100% true. You need it for certain steps. And taking it into other stuff, doing an osteotomy of a wisdom tooth under the microscope. I ask yourself for one thing: can you show me one YouTube video or a lecture or something else where someone pulls out tooth 2/8 out under the microscope? I never saw this. Every footage you see of this microscopic enhanced osteotomies of wisdom teeth is always a tooth 4/8. Why is that? Because it's very comfortable to reach. You have nothing obstructing your view and everything else, but I use it sometimes. I also pull out teeth. Yes, I have to admit I'm not an endodontist. I'm doing general dentistry at all. I usually, when I do extraction osteotomies, I do it with my loops because I'm much more flexible, and I don't have so much hassles with positioning a patient and pulling away the tissues and everything else. And sometimes, yes, I break a root tip. Yes, it happens. And for this, to pull out the root tip, the microscope is excellent, but only for this little step. I never would begin an osteotomy under the microscope because I don't see any reason for it. But when you have problems and you don't have a good sight and you can look inside the alveole and it's deep and it's bleeding, take the microscope, take direct elimination, and you can get it out easily without hurting and doing bad for the patient by taking about 2 cubic centimeters of bone away for an osteotomy. And also for preparations, if we are talking about preparations for partial crowns, I seldomly do full crowns. So 80% of my work are partial crowns, saving tooth structure as far as possible. And if you take tooth 2.6, 2.7, and you have an approximal box without loops, without magnification, without light, you see anything. You're just drilling somewhere, hoping for the best. You know? And with magnification, you take a rubber dam, you're quite a patient. He's out of the equitation, he can swallow, he can spell out, he can talk to you, you know, it's well anesthetized, you see everything, you have a full control. And I don't know why the people are still doubting the use of magnification. I have no idea. But it's like, steady hollowing of the stone. If you talk to the people more and more and you show the pics, and I'm not talking about the front veneers, that's also the other case, you know, where there's only one guy I know really posting good stuff, or two guys with molar restorations, molar crowns and molar puncture crowns and something else, and all the other guys are aesthetic zone, and all you see is a front crown. I mean, seriously, this is not really a challenge to do a good front crown with a microscope. The challenge begins in the lower molar region, as else. This is honest, at least. And I have no idea where the people are.
Thank you. I mean, it has a wider range actually, because till date people restrict endo and magnification. I don't know why. I mean, it is a nice justification that you have given that it can be used in every branch. Why we are only restricting to endo? Back to Anuj. I mean, I think so. Next,
Dr. Venisha. Dr. Venisha has a question for him.
So can you tell hello? Can you tell me something about how to document using a microscope? What are the good cameras for documentation or room flashes?
Why do you want to document? What do you want to do with the picture?
The documentation is important.
What do you want to do with the picture? Do you want to do a presentation?
Yeah, presentation or any research work or any publication required for that?
Okay, then you need a high quality setup. And sometimes it's very difficult to get a nice picture with a microscope, because it's dependent of the light source you have, of the microscope, of the lenses used, of the camera body used. So there is no universal answer. Take this camera body, take this photo tube, and you get a nice picture. No, definitely not. It's much more complex. So it's not easy to answer. You know, I'm using a Zeiss Pro Ergo at the moment.
Okay.
I have a different starting point than you might have.
Okay.
Alone, given the quality of the optics itself. So it's a difference if you take a global, it's a difference if you take a Zoomex, it's a difference if you take a Labomet, it's a difference if you take a Cups of Flexion or whatever the brand is. You know, they all have their specialties. The lenses are better coated, less better coated. They have a very good light, a very low light. So there is no universal answer to it.
So suppose a fresher is buying a microscope and he wants to document certain pictures for presentation or somewhere for saving those pictures, then what would you recommend? Like the common question which is asked is mostly what DSLR camera should we go? What will be the good photographic documentation?
It's usually at the moment. I mean, 5 years ago, I would say you take a mirrorless digital camera and put it on a photo tube and something else. But nowadays, with the excellent mobile cameras we have all in our phones, grab a mobile phone adapter. You're much more flexible, and the pictures are not that bad at all. If you take a Huawei P30 with a 40 megapixel camera, I mean, it's madness. You never need a 40 megapixels, you know. But they take very good and very average pictures.
And do you require a ring flash with it?
No, because it doesn't make sense. But this is a philosophical discussion, you know. There are pros and there are cons. Yeah, we can battle for it about days. And I have some friends from the
Sir, but
microscopic
it's one
view.
of the most commonest questions which we face. If you look at the research work articles, you have good documentation of access openings and everything, and everybody asks the same question while purchasing a microscope, like how to document using a microscope. Because what microendodontists do in their presentations is such good image qualities. So the fresher only asks that, can I have that microscope with that camera to document pictures? So it's one of the most commonest questions asked now.
And it's very funny because if you ask those guys who are presenting how this picture was done, guess what yet? You seldomly get an answer. Not in the public, okay? Because very, very often it's an external macro setup with ring flash and dedicated macro lens and a very good camera and everything else, and they just take the shoot, they crop it out, and they sell it as microscope picture, which is not true at all. So if you want to have excellent pictures, microscope pictures, you go on the Facebook page of Sergio Nicola.
Okay, right.
And he's doing the same stuff. So basically, this is a presentation or a lecture of about 4 to 6 hours.
Okay. Then we have a separate topic to it then, right? Because what I've seen is they usually ask that give them a camera setting, they set the camera and they photograph. Nobody wants to learn the step. They have to be a setup. They want what camera settings have to be done for a microscope documentation.
And there are a few basic settings that should be done, yes, but all the pics are post-processed. So you need somehow to enhance the clarity, the sharpness, the colors, the white balance, and so on. And this is not done automatically. If I take this mobile, and I take a picture, it comes out very nice when you have enough light. Right. And then you have the Instagram stuff and Facebook stuff. You have 1,000 possible filters, and you just push a button and it's online. It's not the same with microscopic dentistry or microscopic documentation. No, by far not. And this is something that people have to understand first. Second,
we should have a separate live panel session on photographic documentation using microscope, I think.
Yeah, Sergio and I thought about making something together. This would be very, very, very funny because sometimes we have adverse positions, very adverse positions. But at the end, our results are almost the same. So there are many ways that lead to Rome. But it's not that easy that you buy a camera at Costco or somewhere and you put it on a microscope and it works. No, definitely not.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Off to you, Dr. Anuj.
So thank you, Dr. Ganesha. So, Dr. Oscar, as we are looking into, as we discussed, and Dr. Nitish also said that it should not restrict to endo. So I just want to ask you a very basic question: where to start? And I am an orthodontist. Okay, so being a specialist, I don't see many people using magnification in orthodontics. So where a basic with a general dentist and a specialist, where do they start?
Basically, first in your mindset. When your head is not too prepared, you have to give up a lot of comfort and you have to give up a lot of uncertainty, which sometimes comforts us. What I always tell in my microscopic courses is start with the initial examination. Take your time, take 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 2 months. I needed for myself about 9 months to master the microscope itself without killing the patient on my chair with a dental probe or whatever I had sharp and cutting in my hands. And take the time you need. Initial examination is very good because you have to look at every tooth, at every angle, and at every surface a tooth has. Do not underestimate the time you need for it. So an initial examination at the beginning with the microscope will take you about 15 to 20 minutes because you don't have any clue how to position the patient, how to get a look, and how to position yourself, and how to position your assistant. It's so multifactorial, it's so complex at the end. And you see all of us guys, looking through the microscope and that's all, yeah, it's easy, it's so easy. No, it's not easy. It's a very hard way to get there. So the first starting point would be initial examination, but you have to be sure that you want to go on the journey because you spent a lot of money. For example, there is now a sales action here in Germany for a Zeiss Taro. I think something about 23,000 euros. And you spend this amount of money, and this is a lot of money. 23,000 euros it's a bunch of money, you know. And what do you do if you don't like it? What will you do with the stuff? You can sell it, of course, but you will have a loss. So if you do this, first ask the companies to give it for you for 2 weeks trial out phase. Usually they charge you a small sum, you know, for all the expenses they have with transportation, setup, and cleaning afterwards. But then you have it 2 weeks in your office with this microscope brand, and then you can start to work with the initial examinations. Grab your dental assistants, for example, put her on the chair, you know, try it out. I don't recommend to do this with relatives. It could worsen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the answer. But I'll again go a bit more basic on that. As we are talking about magnification with microscope. So I would like to ask the question, where to start the journey of magnification? As we say that you should be focused on the loops and then you should go ahead to the microscopes.
Yeah.
So where to start basically?
It's basically, if you're doing your driving's license, you have no experience, not at all. You're fresh. You are not programmed, and you are not intaken by opinions or something like that. Basically, you can do your driver's license on a Ferrari. It doesn't matter. So if you don't have loops or something else, you can go straight for a microscope. What's the problem? There is no problem. The problem is constructed by different people, you know, external factors which are influencing your opinions by telling you stories, and then we humans like stories. So basically, if you don't have any experience with magnifications, with loops or something else, just go straight for the microscope. Don't waste money.
That's a very, very frank answer. Thank you so much. Over to you, Anuj.
Dr. Nitish wanted to ask you before he gets in, I'll ask you one question. There's a question by Dr. Manish Anand. He says, handy cameras, is it still relevant to use with microscope?
Sorry?
Handy cameras, are they still relevant to use with microscope? It's a question by Dr. Manish Anand.
Yeah, it can be. It's possible.
Before I push in Dr. Nitish, I would like to say something on documentation. If you remember, I had come down for documentation to your office, the same desk. I had learned documentation, and it took you, I would say, half an hour to 45 minutes to teach me those basics, because I could understand a little, but then you told me there is no one setting. I still remember those words. You said there is no one setting. People who are giving you devices or selling their C-mounts, selling their cameras, no, it's not working that way. So, and you taught me processing. So yes, processing, it took me a lot of time. It took me 3 to 4 years to understand what you said to me in those small span of time. But it took me a lot of time to understand what actually you meant by it.
Yeah, but
right after.
Nowadays it's getting a little bit easier. So, for example, the post-processing process, you know, it's a whole digital workflow, documentation workflow, and there are also certain ways how to manage it. The best thing is, Anush, we make a course in your center, you know, and then I have 1 day, 2 days with all the people, all the stuff. They can bring all the camera gear, and we can do it in everything. But in a short webinar session, you know, it's like.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Over to Dr. Nitish.
In continuation with Dr. Divya Roop, Dr. Oscar, what I want to ask you, like in generally, whenever we are conducting a course, people go through all this loops, they use loops, they use microscope. But what I felt is people buy microscope, but they never use it so often. They come in and they go out. What are your views? Because what I have seen till the time you struggle, because you have to struggle a lot. I mean, you have to be consistent if you use magnification, whether you're using loops or microscope, but they come and out. They go in and they go out. What are your views about these things? And the second question, what I want to ask you is the difference between your integrated camera and the external attachment that we have. I mean, what is the difference? I mean, do you find in photography or in documentation?
For the first question, this is what I said. You know, your first starting point, entry point is your mindset. If you don't want to go on this journey and you don't give the commitments into the stuff and everything else, you don't need to spend the money. Just leave it alone. You know, buy a new car, get a, I don't know what, vacations. But stop investing money for stuff, and this is a general advice. It doesn't matter if this is microscope, if this is a Tarek, if this is a root canal motor or whatever else. If you don't plan to use it on a daily basis with a lot of commitment and effort, stop it. Okay. Right? And from the second stuff, integrated or external, it's very easy. An integrated camera is expensive like hell. It's unbelievably expensive. Why ever? This is a very well kept secret of the companies. I don't have any idea why they make it so expensive. You are not flexible because it's not upgradable. If you have any problem, something else, your microscope basically is broken. If in 2 years a better camera comes out, you can't upgrade it. And if you would be able to upgrade it, they would charge you the same sum as they would buy it new. So it does not make sense in my eyes. External setup, very easy. If a new camera comes out with a much better performance, or you just exchange the camera, because the phototube itself and the microscope optics are not getting bad or old or something else, but the camera electronics is. So my preference would be definitely the external setup. I have much more control of what I'm doing with devices I like to do with it. But this depends also on the quality level you want to achieve. Do you want a high-end documentation for lectures and something else? You need an external setup, period. If you just need it for your internal documentation, just to remember whether you opened the pulp or how was the decay looking like, or showing the patient something, an integrated camera might be very suitable also, because you don't have any cables. It is working more or less out of the shelf. If you choose the correct system for it, there are pros and cons for both systems. But basically, my advice would be don't spend money and time for the internal camera system. Go for an external.
So that means once we buy a microscope, at least we have a flexibility in an external attachment that slowly we can upgrade. We can upgrade. Thank you, Dr. Afsar. Back to Dr. Anuj.
Oscar, next question which I want to ask you personally is, why did you shift from Pico to Magda? That's one question which everyone asks me, any Zeiss user for that matter. And then I would go into the other brands of microscopes, which I'm sure everyone wants to know. But first question is why you moved to Magna from Pico?
Why do you drive Audi?
I don't advise Audi. That's my dad.
So basically, it started with this little crappy Leica M300, and after accustomation to all the stuff, after getting training and the experience, it was not enough. It was helping me in certain 60% of the cases, but for the last 40%, I needed more light and more magnification, more clarification, and better optics. So I went for a CAPS. And the CAPS was way better than the Leica, but also it was enough for 70% of the cases. But if you are talking about file fragment removal from the apical part or deep apical splits or whatever else, the CAPS wasn't enough. So I got the Pro Ergo. It was in my office before the Pico.
Oh.
Yeah, 2008. It was a bargain. I couldn't walk by. I was not buying it seriously. And I mean, the Pro Ergo is still the king of all the stuff. It is the most comfortable and one of the best microscopes I have ever seen. As a German engineering par excellence, it's a dream, seriously. But when you're limited to endodontics, you need something like a pico. You don't need a fancy magnetic brakes and a zoom and everything else. I'm quite sure that for endo, with a pico, you're much faster because you have a manual changer. You switch the magnifications easily, and with the Pro Aero, I have to wait a little bit to the zoom, and then the magnification factor goes in. Nevertheless, it's part of the taste. As I'm doing 8 hours, 9 hours a day, I try to reduce it, but it never works. Work under the microscope, I needed something what is really comfortable, and the Pro Aero is still unreached. Oh, the Zoomax is nearby, the new one. I had it in my office for about 3 months. And it's a nice piece, given the price they are charging you for it. And it's a very nice microscope. But still, from the clarity of the pictures and everything else, the CUPS was the best microscope ever I had in my office for taking photos.
And what's your take on this Labomed Magna? That also has clutches.
It's also, it's basically I'm not affiliated to any microscope company anymore, and I enjoy it a little bit because I'm free to talk. That was not possible all the times. But basically, microscope is a microscope, and a tool is a tool. Period. There is a one better tool and a less good tool, but this is something a very very individual decision. As you have no ideas about performance, the specifications of the microscope, only the microscope manufacturers have them, and they don't want to be comparable. There is no list like in a photo journal where they take 5 camera bodies and they compare each camera body to each other, and they give you a table with all the specifications and everything else. There is nothing available for the dental microscope market, and this is due to lack of physical information and specifications. We don't have them. So we have them. So what I tell the people always before buying a microscope or considering to buy a microscope is like, go to a dental fair where all the big microscope manufacturers, so they are microscope companies, and take one device with you or one stuff. I have a special block I designed for measuring the optics performance and microscope performance. And I know very well the colors, I know very well the sharpness, I know very well all the molds I built in and everything else. So I take this, I put it under the microscope, I observe it with the microscope under different magnification levels and light levels, and I go to the next manufacturer. And this is what I advise the people to do. Take one thing that you know very well optically, take it to the microscope company, put it under the microscope, observe it under different magnification levels, light levels, go to the next company. And the microscope you're gonna buy is the one where you like the optical impression the most. It's very easy. Because for example, one good example is I have a red-green deficiency. I see the colors when they are pure. But for example, a strawberry field for me is killing. My wife always shouts at me that I should pick some strawberries, but honestly, I don't see them.
Okay.
So my color impression is a different one compared to yours. So if I tell you this microscope is giving a very crisp and a very natural color picture, this might not apply to you. So it's always highly individual, and you have to choose the correct microscope for yourself. And please don't let influence you by saying, "Oh, Zeiss is the best." Not always.
Yes, that's one thing which I will agree with you. I would request Dr. Vinisha to ask the next question.
Sir, as a fresher, many students ask us what are the basic requirements to look forward while buying a microscope. How will you summarize or outline what are the basic requirements when you look for a microscope?
Is it stable? This is the most interesting stuff, because I prefer ceiling mount or wall mounts.
Okay.
The worst option you can ever choose is a foot mount, rolling. Oh my God, you never remove this microscope from one room to the other. Never, ever. perhaps once, because the microscope itself with all the weights, counterweights, stabilizing weights, and everything else weighs about 70 to 90 kilograms. You won't move it. And if you say your dental assistants move it from operatory 1 to operatory 2, she debalances all the microscope. She does not put on the brakes on the microscopic arm. So the first time she moves around the corner, it's like bong, and she bashes the microscope out against the wall. It's like, why are you doing this? So you never will move it. Is the arm stable? There are big differences in the mechanic of the arms between the competitions and all the microscope companies. So this would be one stuff. Then the light. Is it LED? Everyone wants LED because LED is smart and it's a cool light. No, that's not true. I don't dare to use the phrase I usually use. It's bullshit. It's not true. The manufacturers are telling you something. Oh yeah, our LED reaches 150,000 lux. What does that mean? Because the manufacturer doesn't tell you. It's measured in a distance from 10 centimeters in a completely dark room. Everything is. They were confusing you. So this is what I tell Anish. And before, it's like, take one device with you, one thing that you like, that you know, and observe this under the microscope. And if you like the optical look of it, take the microscope. Easy as that. Because you can't compare it. You never will be able to compare all the manufacturers because you don't have the measuring equipment you need for it.
Right.
And the rest of the stuff, it's secret. It's really secret. They keep it secret. I can show you all my non-disclosure agreements I have behind me in my shelf. It's like, this hazel paper.
Right.
And service. Don't underestimate the service. Service is key because you buy the microscope, but you need still another chair and you need another equipment. And sometimes it has to be service because of the mechanics and everything else. If you buy a microscope from someone who can't provide the technical service to you, you're lost.
Right. Thank you so much.
And the color. I knew you were laughing, but because I had the discussions quite often. As I don't know how the situation in India is here in Europe, and US, America, and something else. More and more women are coming into dentistry, into the professional dentistry, and not being a chauvinist. Please don't get me wrong. I look for the technical specs. I don't care for the color or for the design or something else. It has to work, and it has to work very well. And I know for my wife, because she chooses sometimes stuff for, this looks nice. But
yeah, I agree.
So some of the manufacturers, for example, deliver custom colors, so you don't get the typical dental beige. You can spray it in red. You can have it in yellow. You can have every color you want to. So this might be also a nice argument.
So it looks like more of color coordinated practice then. That's what women in dentistry feel that. I second that. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Anuj.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oscar. That was a very interesting answer. And I hope Dr. Carlos must have got a very basic answer. What microscope should you buy and how do you buy it? So there's a question by Dr. Manish Anand regarding DSLR adapter. There are options 1x or 0.7x ratio with reference to eyepiece FOV. Which one is best recommended?
APS-C. It's very easy. You don't need full frame.
Okay. So I hope Dr. Manish got your answer. So coming to a very basic question, as most of the people start their magnification practice with loops, and some of the dentistry practice which is not towards the microscope. So which loop should we start with, and how do you decide which loop we should go for?
It's always, it's basically, I'm not going to talk about the physical distinctions between Galileic and Kepler systems in the loops. It depends what do you want to do and which level of quality and which level of magnification do you want to have. Talking about ladies. Ladies have always very, very delicate nose. You know, it's like if I put them on, for example, at size loops with 3.5, 4.0, they were weighing about 150 grams with the light. So the lady will have it for 1/2 hour perhaps and then put it off because her nose aches like hell. So they need something light. The Galileic system was 2.0, 2.2. There was one manufacturer in Germany offering Galileic loops was 2.5. But it's amazing because you look like a frog. The front lenses are like undercuts. It's unbelievable. So something like 2.0, but what you need is a coaxial light for the loops. Definitively. Never buy a loops without a light. And nowadays the systems are very, very lightweighted and performance side very good. So you should do this extra expense because you enjoy your work much more. And it helps you to make your life easier when you have a coaxial light for the loops on there.
Thank you so much. And one more query just in my mind. When you are selecting a loop, does your magnification should be dependent on the posture of sitting you are having during your...
This is independent from a magnification factor. This is dependent from the manufacturer offering on working distance. Because this is an optical system, this can be calculated. And usually, even this is valid for the microscopes, you know, it's the working distance of 25 centimeters is a joke, and not even a good one. So never go under 30 centimeters. Even for small persons, 30 centimeters are the minimum working distance you should have, because otherwise you are sitting like the troll shrunk together. And when you increase the working distance, my personal working distance is something like about 48 centimeters. That I'm sitting most upright, which is comfortable for me being upright. The loops and everything else, the companies never looked at it because no one asked this question and it was never discussed by the people. You know? But nowadays they offer also bigger working distances. And this is the most interesting part. So this is something you have to measure in your office, in your working situation, not in the fair at the booth. That this is not possible. You have to sit in your chair in your own clinics, in your working situation with a patient, positioned like you would start to work and sit in an upright, comfortable position for yourself that you see everything, and then you can measure the working distance. And this is something also the vendors should take into account because this is an additional unique selling point.
Thank you so much. I hope doctors who would like to start magnification, a very, very important point is your position of working. So do select your magnification loops or microscope according to your sitting position. So over to Dr. Nitish Kambod.
Dr. Oscar, as asked by Dr. Vinisha for a beginners, like whenever we plan to buy a microscope, how important are optics? Because we start comparing companies like if I will like Zoomax, like Lebomed, like Zeiss, like so how important are, I mean, what's the difference in optics? Because ultimately we are just buying eyes when we buy a microscope. And so how do you, I mean, how a person should justify or how a person get clarified that which microscope is having the best optics, and plus the armamentarium, like we always plan to buy a basic microscope, and so how a unit can be modified, like we in case varioscope can be attached or Mora can be attached. I mean, if you can just give some light on this.
The biggest
regarding optics and attachments.
The biggest problem with the optics is that the same answer applies for almost everything what goes into the physical specifications of the microscope. You don't know which glass was used. You don't know which coatings were used. You don't know who did the calculations. You don't know how good it was the producing process. Because, you know, if you have a manual changer, you need almost 3 lenses be aligned perfectly in the optical path. and you don't know how good the physical properties are of your oculars, which are more or less the deciding factor in getting a good optical quality. And so you don't know this stuff, and the companies don't tell you this stuff. They just buzz you with a word like, "Oh, we have a TCA special active coating," whatever this might mean. Yeah. I don't know. But what you can do is, it's perfectly when you take, for example, a black cube, a small play cube, something black. And if you go to the microscope and you put it under the microscope, you put on the highest magnification factor and the light 100% up. Then you adjust it to be sharp in the optical pathway. Then sometimes you see optical fringes, colored fringes, red and blue, around the object. If you see these fringes, you know the quality is, you don't want this microscope, because it falsifies it. It's not good calculated, it's not well aligned. And this is a little trick that you can help with. Otherwise, only comparing the microscopes, as I stated now 4 times in this session, as I take your thing with you, put it under each microscope and observe it yourself individually under each microscope, and then you can figure out which optical impression of which microscope did you like the most. Otherwise, we don't have any comparisons. We don't have any base, any data for comparisons, nada niente.
Okay. And what about the attachments? Like, once you start using a microscope and you become addicted, then you feel that I need more, I need a good varioscope, and then life becomes, too complicated actually.
You have to look, before you purchase, is how modular is the microscope built, and basically nowadays every microscope is extremely modular, so you can exchange the stuff. It's the easiest way, or easiest manufacturer to deal with is size, and especially the Pico, because you have an army of third-party manufacturers who are producing stuff for it, because it's on the market since, I don't know, 20 years right now. And it's very versatile and multifunctional and everything else. But also, if you go for a Zeiss Flexion, not Zeiss, Carsten Jung Flexion microscope, you can exchange everything. It's also highly modular. Zoomex is also highly modular. Labomed also, it's highly modular. What I tell the people is, if you don't know what you buy from a third-party manufacturer, don't buy it. Okay, buy it from the company, buy it from the brand of your microscope, because they know exactly what they built and how it was calculated. So it's fitting to 110%. I very often get messages from people who bought, "Oh, I got something on eBay." Yeah, super. Do you even know what you purchased there? No, but it was cheap. Yeah, excellent. It's like, it's not working out. If you don't know what to do, or how to do it, or if it's a good quality, don't buy it. Simple as that. Stick to your manufacturer. So basically, in our times, there is no manufacturer which is not modular at all.
Yeah, this is what we buy, because when we buy any product, we always try to reduce the cost. And when we get habitual, then we say, it's useless, actually. It's not upgradable, and then we get stuck.
But you know the problem. This is worldwide. It's the same stuff. It does not matter if you're in India, if you're in China, if you're in Germany, whatever. We dentists are always the cheapest ones ever. Oh, I don't want to pay the money. But when the patient asks you, why does your cost crown for 500 euros? It's like, you are impressed. It's like, how you dare to ask why my crown costs 500 euro, because it's worth every cent. It's a little bit bigottery, because basically you buy a microscope for, I don't know, 15,000 euros, and then you try to save 100 euros for a camera. I don't understand this. You don't buy a Porsche and then the cheapest tires you can get. How do you expect a car to deliver its performance? And the same applies to the microscope, or every stuff we buy for our clinics. The cheapest is not always the best. Neither is the most expensive. It's like on eBay. You pick something in the middle.
Thank you, Dr. So back to Dr. Anuj.
There are two questions which have been asked. One is by, I will not name the company, but a tech from that company. He asked me about which beam splitter is better for documentation work. It's a 50-50, 80-20, or 70-30. There's one question.
I prefer the 35 to 65. And, basically, it depends. Which light source do you have?
Mm-hmm.
I work mainly with a xenon light, which is well aligned and everything with new bulbs, pulls out about 220 kilo lux. So I use a 50-50 beam splitter because I have an SLR on it. You can substitute light photography or for photography only with small light. This is not possible. You can trick physics, it is not possible. So if you have an SLR setup external on a photo tube and something else, 50-50. If you have only a video camera or a mobile camera, 20-80 is enough.
Okay. There's one more question which I want to ask you, which is asked by Dr. Carlos. They say that everyone says this, and there are two aspects of this question. One is by our own colleagues, and one are by our students. And the question they say is, bigger the better. Bigger the better in magnification. In magnification.
No, I can't answer this properly because no. If my wife gets this, I'm dead. So that no, this is not true. There is no standard procedure or standard magnification. There is no table. Tooth access under a 6-fold magnification. That's nonsense. You know, it's like if you trained enough, I'm doing my access openings about 10-fold magnifications. This is my starting point where I begin. And I feel comfortable with this. And in the beginning of a microscopic magnification journey, it was like 3-fold magnification because I needed all the oversight and I needed all the other stuff to know where I am, not getting lost in the oral cavity of the patient and everything else. So the more experience you gather, the higher the magnifications will get. But 40-fold magnification, like some Leicas is offering, are simply a nonsense because you don't see anything. You have a field of depth of about 0.1 millimeters. You can't work it properly because every shaking of the patient is like a little earthquake. You lose the focus and everything, so it does not make sense. And I think the maximum magnification, which is still meaningful for working, is about 20-fold. And everything going up is like minor is bigger. It's a comparison which should not be done.
Yeah, but I agree on this with you because a lot of articles published which say this range for this and this range for that. But what I have realized in this small journey is that, as you mentioned already, it's your experience and your hand movements along with experience. If your hands are shaky, then you need a lesser magnification. I don't think a higher one would help.
Don't talk about shaking hands. I'm drinking about 2.5 liters coffee a day, so. I need this for compensation of something, it's like, no, but this is for this reason, do you have chair with armrests to eliminate all the shaking and to make everything calm and clear. But it does not make sense, simple as that. And all this article stating, yeah, you need this magnification for this and this magnification. It's like, I know some of the people working or writing these articles, and I tell you they should write less and work more. And
yes.
It would clarify up itself.
Before we come to last few questions by Dr. Vinisha, I would like to ask one more question on instrument retrieval. There was an article of yours on self-adjusting file which broke and you got it out easily. What is your experience with other file systems? We will not name the companies, but yes, what is your take on instrument retrieval under magnification with all the advent of ultrasonics, MTA, bioceramics, so much of noise in the air and in the market?
Do you want to have a very nice case to publish it on Facebook University? Then get it out at every expense. Sometimes I see cases where I think to myself, my God, why did you do this? What is the reason for it? And those people advocating removal in every case, I like to ask them to do a or PubMed research, Medline research for the odds of the tooth still being inside the mouth without developing a pathology, still with the instrument embedded in a root canal filling. They will be astonished, I promise. So this research should be done before taking into account of removing a fragment, something else. If you try to remove the fragment, set yourself a time limit. If you don't get the fragment out after 20 minutes, you just stop it. And consult your patient, get the consent from the patient, and tell the patient why. Of course, you can remove every fragment you put into the tooth, but at which expenses? You sacrifice hard tooth structure. And what I might say after 20 years experience of endodontics and everything else with vertical fractures is the more tooth you have, the better is it for its long-term longevity. And I took over my office from my mother, and she was one doing endo with a head trim size 20, some peroxide and endometazone. And meanwhile, I have 40 years records of the lady's work. So you have to ask yourself, 40 years. You know, it's making you humble. because you are diagnosing with a cone beam and you're doing this and rotaries and bioceramics and whatever you are doing in the tooth for 1 hour, 2 hours or whatever else, and it fails 5 years after. And then I see a patient with an ISO 20, Guttapercha point, swimming in endometazone, with a radix anchor, an amalgam core built up, and working as a telescopic anchor for 40 years. So instrument retrieval or fragment retrieval, it seems to be a new trend at the moment at Facebook and everything else, because there are, in the last 12 months, I think 5 or 6 new devices came out. But again, I point to Sergio Nicola. He has a YouTube video how he makes a do-it-yourself fragment remover very cheaply for a low cost. You don't need to spend $1,000 for the stuff. It's crazy.
And there is another Facebook university which talks about lateral canals being filled all the time. So let's not get into it. I would not get into it. I would request Dr. Ganesha to ask a concluding question.
So what's your say about ergonomics and magnification?
Now I'm laughing because I'm giving ergonomic courses since 14 years with a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, for the dental team. It's always very funny to see, because the main argument to buy a microscope or to use magnification is a more ergonomic sitting and a more ergonomic working, or whatever this might mean. And some people confuse ergonomics with sitting at 12 o'clock position with a straight back, which is blocked and not moving 2 hours away from the microscope and whatever else. And I mean, you have to work actively on it, because all the faults you are doing without magnifications, like bending over, being crooked and something else, you can do it the same with the microscope. I have enough pictures of people sitting in the courses and sitting not ergonomically. And if you tell them what is ergonomically and how to have you position a patient, and you have to break habits and you have to change your habits, you know, it's like everyone from us knows you're doing a filling, you're doing this on the patient. Yeah, you can't do this with the microscope anymore. And the people are always, if you use a chair with an armrest, for example, the people are complaining, oh, I have so much neck pain after using the microscope. Yes, of course. But when you don't have any armrest, you're sitting like this.
Right.
Because you're blocking your shoulder belt to stabilize your hands. You know, this is not ergonomic. So you need armrest to sit relaxed, but then you have to reposition the patient. Positioning of the patient is key, and no one talks about this in ergonomic courses. I don't understand why. This is not taught to the guys. It's also that you have to sit upright in 98 degrees angle of the magnet. Yeah, this is a small part, but you have to work with the patient, you have to position the patient, and you have to work with the patient. And this is sometimes much more psychology than actual dentistry.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you, Dr. Anuj.
So Thank you so much, Dr. Oscar. That was a wonderful, wonderful session. And I think we started with a new, I think people who would like to start the journey with magnification, they would be really, really interested now. Very basic, very frank opinions by you. Thank you so much.
Roop, I would want to have just one-on-one with him for a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the clarity of net. Okay, Oscar, one thing which I would like to say is thanks a lot to you for always being by our side, giving your frank opinion, whether it's on live sessions like this or whether it's in a university or it's in any lecture at any platform. So there are two things which amaze me about you is your frankness and your t-shirts, like the one you're wearing today. I've never seen you in formals, never. And this is what brings out the best about you. That you're yourself.
I have a formal. Don't worry.
Yeah, you have. But the best thing about you is you even if you are an opinion leader for any company, you do not get biased. That's one thing which I would really appreciate, and I would like to tell this to my colleagues, youngsters who've been working and who would want to pursue into anything in their life, that don't get biased by companies. Have your own opinions supported by good documentation. Like last time I had a discussion with you, if you remember, was an OpenApex, and within 3 messages you gave me around 4 to 5 references saying what is an OpenApex. So from that day I became a bigger fan than only clinical aspect, but you weigh them down very nicely with documenting or having good proof, sound proofs behind it. And you all will not believe that he is an excellent photographer outside tooth also. And this is there are a lot of things which amaze me about Oscar. And before we end, I would like to really thank Dr. Divyarup Rai, Dr. Nitish Kamboj, Dr. Vinisha Pandey. These 3 guys are real close friends, and they have always been supporting me. And like how we discussed just 2 days back, that yes, we need to do this. So I had all my friends cancel their programs and come here and be with you. Thank you all.
Thank
I
you.
hope, Oscar, you also enjoyed the session.
Bye-bye. Bye, Oscar. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed.